Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Middle Georgia Spotlight. I'm your host, Jack Ellis. We're glad to have you with us. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Caduceus Medicine, J. Franklin Automotives, and, of course, the people here at WMUB Channel 38 at Mercer University. And I know you've heard the good news by now. The person that we have in the spotlight this week has been all over the news, literally in the spotlight, put our community in the spotlight. None other than the Superintendent of the Year for the Bibb County School System, Curtis Jones. Welcome to our program, Dr. Jones.
Thank you, sir. Very happy to be here.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Because, as we said, this is quite an accomplishment for you and for our community, but especially for you and your family. We congratulate you. But it didn't happen, as you said, you becoming Superintendent of the Year. You've been here 4 years now, approaching 4 years. Didn't happen by yourself. That you gave credit to the team. How did you assemble this team in such a short time? Are this a team that you inherited, or you brought a team in and built it?
Truthfully, the team's a combination of both. Tansy Kilcrease had been identified about 2 months before I arrived by the previous superintendent to be the assistant for curriculum instruction. And I'll be honest, Tansy is fantastic. Does a great job, works very hard. I mean, she'll be a superintendent one day. And so she was already here. Ron Collier, who was the chief financial officer, was here as well, and so he's still on the staff. Randy Howard was the legal counsel for the school district, and Randy remained with me as well. Three people came in and joined me. One was Paige Busby, who came in to be the assistant superintendent for human resources from a county south of us. Interesting story about her, I'll tell quickly. I asked people to come help me find a great HR person, because you got to have the right people. And so they helped me identify a great search committee. Paige was identified for the search committee, and as we were going through the candidates, as they were going through that process, they got halfway through and they wanted to go out and have lunch, so I went to join them. And my team said, we haven't found the right person yet, but this lady knows what she's talking about. You'd be good if you can get her to come. I said, really? They said, yeah. Have y'all asked her about it? Well, no, it's not a possible thing. I said, let me talk to her. And so at the end of the day, they still had that same opinion, and it was, she was just the right person. And so she said, I didn't know the position was available. I wish I had. And then about a week later, we had a conversation, and she agreed to come to that position. So she had a day-long interview with the team that was actually making the selection. Yeah. And so she was great.
It's very modest of you to give them the accolades, and I'm sure because this is a team effort, no question about it, but it took the head coach or the general manager or the owner, whomever, I guess the citizens or the owner, you serve as the general manager, coach, or what have you, but it took your vision and your instruction, laid out the plan for them to buy into and move forward. When you came here, when you took this job, obviously you did the research, I'm sure, saw where we were, where we were trying to get to, the kind of community. Did you have any idea that we would get there so fast?
Well, before I do that, I have two other people I need to mention. Yeah. Keith Simmons, my chief of staff, came with me from Griffin. He had been a high school principal, had been here in the district before. And Jamie Cassidy had been an alternative school principal in Griffin as well, so he came. So that was the team that came together. And I'll be honest, the very first effort was to get that team to jail, and we were able to do that quickly. And I think if there was any reason that gave us the main opportunity to succeed, it was how well that group worked together. I had no idea what it was going to take for us to get there. I had the vision that if I could get a good team working at central office, and that we could then get a group of principals that would be willing to work hard and would be willing to accept some changes, I thought we'd be successful. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, my research said we had good principals when I came, that for the vast majority, they were one of the strengths of the district. Some had been in their positions for 8, 9 years. Others were hard charging, and they just needed direction and consistency at the top.
Yeah. What we hear a lot, what we heard a lot before, is that we didn't have enough parental involvement and involvement. Have they bought in, the parents, have they bought into the vision, victory and Was it victory?
Victory in progress.
In progress.
Yeah.
Have they bought into it?
In some ways.
We still have work to do there.
We still have work to do. Parents will buy in when they know you listen to them and that you're willing to respond. And so I think I shared with you, we put in place a thing called Let's Talk, so that if a parent has an issue, they could submit that either through a phone call or through an email or through our website. And what we were able to do is respond to those within 3 business days. Truthfully, we're doing it in like a day and a half. I think that got us some credibility. And then the other thing was, and some people didn't like it, we actually had to raise our millage rate a little bit when we first got here. We go back and get the E-Splosh approved. Those are 2 activities that show the community and parents did buy in, because they supported both of those measures greatly. But I think it had to do with trust. They had to know that we were going to try and do some things differently. And I'll be honest, everyone in the community was totally embracing and was very supportive.
I'm going to go back to just a minute when you mentioned Tansy. I've known Tansy since she was like 3 or 4 years old. When I was an Army recruiter here in Macon, and her parents lived across the street from me, and my daughter was the same age, so they played together.
Okay.
And they wound up at the University of Georgia together at the same time. So, and they made contact again. So I've known her for quite some time, and I agree with you. She's quite a young woman, and we are very blessed to have her in our school system. But let's get back to the as they say, 4 years, obviously. Not only we in the community saw what you were doing, but people from outside saw what you were doing, and that's very, very, very critical. But as I say, all politics are locus, all education, I guess, is locus. So it's more important what we think, but it's important what other people think. Don't get me wrong. But as they say, charity starts at home, and that's where we have to give our things. So if you had to look at the city overall. When you came here, there were some schools on the need to improve list. There were schools that some people say just non-performing. They were giving up on it. Have you ever had a time, I know you had to close a couple of schools, but there was ever a time when you had dismay and said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do what we have to do here based on where I'm starting from?
Truthfully, no, because while you let me talk a little bit about the team that came together, the team that really made it work for me was the school board. The school board was so supportive when I came. I'll give you just a couple examples. You have to change some principals out. You have to make some hard decisions about which schools to close and how to do that. And what the board collectively said is, we want a superintendent who's going to lead us, a superintendent who's going to make solid recommendations, will not be afraid to let us ask questions, but then once we decide that we can come out of it together. And that was what they did. Probably one of the better examples was Northeast High School. When I went to visit Northeast, I really had concerns about the condition of the school, what looked like it had been neglect for a while. And I said, we're going to make this the next priority on the E-Splosh. They said, that's the plan, we're going to do that. But this was the hard part. We were in the process then of putting in new technology in all of our schools. And we decided that we were going to go with the school that had the greatest need. They were going to get it first. That was Northeast. And so some would come back with, why would you put new technology in an old school that you know you're going to replace in a couple of years? And my answer was, because that 9th grade student is only going to be in 9th grade for 1 year. That 10th grade student is only going to be in 10th grade for 1 year. We can't wait 2 years in order to get that going. And the board said, you're right. We need to do that now. And so we put new technology in the schools, and I'll be honest, the school responded. It was like, wow, we haven't gotten anything like this. And so I think that led to some of the buy-in. So the board was very supportive. But based on that and some recommendations that I had to make for principals and assistant principals, we can't talk about executive session.
Sure.
But sometimes the board would say, I'm not quite sure about that recommendation, but you're our superintendent. We hired you, and we're going to support you in this. If it doesn't work out, we're going to hold you accountable. But we hope it works out, and we're going to support you. And that has been what I've seen. So they've been very supportive, and I have not had a single day of doubt about the support from the board or about us being able to be successful. Now, I've had doubts about how long it was going to take. I've had doubts about if we were working on the right thing at the right time, at the right pace. But I think everybody has those kind of doubts and questions. But as far as could we get it done, yeah, I thought we could.
Now, you've had to make some real tough decisions, as you said, not only within this, your own facilities, but you made a very tough decision about a charter school here that people have put a lot of trust in, a lot of money into it, a lot of faith in it, and you came in and said, well, this is not going to serve the children, the best interest of the children. You shut it down. What was some of your thinking there? Not to casting aspersion on the people who were running it, but you focusing on the children.
Well, truthfully, people running it are fine folks, are supportive now because their children are in our schools. But I think you have to let the data tell you what it is you need to do and the recommendation you want to make. When that school opened, some complaints came in from some parents. And because we were one of the authorizers of the school, the State Department asked us to go in and look at it. And so we did. And what we found, we were able to report. And if we had filed a false report, I think it would have been found out. But the school just had issues with being able to complete basic operations.
And the students would suffer, the kids would suffer.
They were suffering. We had teachers who would see, when I went to visit the school, I had teachers say, call me, I'll tell you what's really going on. I can't tell you now. I had people who would say, they're trying to put on a dog and pony show for you, but it's still not working. This is not right. And so that is what I saw. Now, I'll tell you what I also saw. I saw some parents and some students that were very proud. They wanted the school to be successful. But you have to have a certain level of expertise in how to run a school. You got to have teachers who are qualified. You got to have somebody who can teach the new teachers. You have to have a business sense about how to run the school. I mean, truthfully, if you can't feed the kids, get the building clean, be able to run a internet system so that people can communicate with one another.
The basics.
You're gonna the basics. You know, in the what they said in Germany is you got to get the trains to run on time. What I say about a school system, you got to get the buses to run on time. You got to be able to get the bell scheduled, the bells to ring at the right time. And if those things aren't working, the school's not going to work. And so, in that case, we just told the truth about what we saw. And it was not just me. I took my entire senior cabinet over, so we inspected about 15 different areas and wrote up separate evaluations for all of them. And that was what we based our decision on. And I just thought it was right for the right thing to do.
Yeah. Now,
and they had an opportunity. They were only placed on probation. We didn't close them right away. They had probation from September through December. And they had to show they were going to improve. And we gave them specific things that we saw that needed to improve. But they weren't able to make those improvements.
Now, that building was scheduled to be another charter school, and I understand they have either, can you talk about that? Do you feel comfortable in talking about what transpired there and what can we look for in the future? Is that school also under your charge? Is it a state charter school or is it under the Buchanan School System?
That school that you're talking about was going to be a state charter school, so they were not underneath us.
But they're going to use those facilities.
They were going to use that same facility. They were going to be more like Cirrus Academy is now, and like what ACE Academy is going to be next year. Currently, this year, ACE is underneath, is a part of our school system. Next year, they will not be.
Now, I've heard some derogatory things. Now, I don't like to talk about derogatory things. I like to talk about good things. But I've heard some derogatory things about ACE Academy in terms of that they are not as inclusive and as open arms as they should be to the entire community, that they trying to get the cream of the crop, if you will, from the students, as opposed to having a welcome mat out for. Has had any validity in your circles, or just rumors that we're here in the street committee?
I don't deal with rumors, but I'll go back to just talk about facts. It is true that our school district is about 75% African American. ACE is about 70% white. Our school district is about 5% gifted. ACE is probably 3 times that. And so they do have a student population that looks different than what the rest of the school district looks like. And so how that came about, they have a lottery system that they follow. If people have complaints about it or concerns, it can be investigated, but
can it be investigated by you? Who investigate that? You say it's under you now.
Well,
Next, it's going to transition to be a state charter
Next
school.
year.
But right now, if I had a complaint about that school, it would come to you?
They will come to us.
Okay.
And we did have some concerns that have been expressed to us over the last couple of
Not
years.
that I have any concern
Right.
about that. Yeah.
And we've investigated those, and so they have a waiting list. That waiting list is supposedly available for people to see. Initially, I'll just tell you, it's a process, and so this is part of the process. The very first year I was here, the school administration didn't want to share the waiting list with us because they said, "Oh, well, we got some employees from your school system that have their kids on it, and they are afraid you'll retaliate against them." Well, there was so much story and backstory about retaliation that I decided not to push that. And what I mean is, I was just told a lot of people were fearful that central office would act in certain ways and people could lose their jobs. So I said, you know what?
Well, of course,
We
that
don't-
was done found.
Well, I don't know what was true previously, but in order for me to prove it was not true with us, I said, we're not going to investigate. We're not going to look at that. But you need to validate for me. You need to verify for me you do have a waiting list. You have followed through with the way it's supposed to be done and that it is fair.
Okay.
And so that was what they did. And in my world, a person's word means a lot. And so we accepted them at their word that it was true. If we had a parent who gave us a specific example, we took that back over and said, tell us about this one. And for the most part, they all turned out that they were doing what they said they would do.
When he said that his word means something, those of you who are not familiar, and the Middle Georgia area not familiar with Dr. Jones, he's a graduate of West Point Military Academy, and of course, as you know, they have duty on a country, and they don't lie there, and they make sure they don't cheat and do the right thing. So that's why he said his word means something. It's a long history of that, and I'm sure that comes before that. Even your parents probably told you,
Yes, sir.
make sure your word means something.
But it also means something for teachers. Parents have to know they can trust the teacher to tell them the truth about what happened in the classroom. That's the adult. And in the past, the parent and the teacher were a team, and they worked to improve. What I've seen over years now is that some parents would just say, well, I got to defend my child. Well, if your child did wrong, you don't really need to defend them. You need to help us get to the truth, so in the long run, your child will be better served. So I want to get to a point where the community knows that a teacher's word is as good as anybody else's and that they can believe the teacher. We don't have any interest other than the best education we can provide for students.
Well, you wear your accomplishments, as I said, very modestly, and we appreciate that. But you also know that we have work to do, even though you've made great strides. But as they say, the biggest room in the world is room for improvement.
I agree.
And I know you'll continue to work on that. Going forward, what are the biggest challenges? We know that we have some schools where the state came in and they're going to assist you, which you're welcome, by the way. I've read where you welcome them to come in. We won't need all the help we can get. But other than that, what are the other big challenges? Not the bricks and mortar. We realize we're going to talk about Northeast, what's going on there, and the loss and how you're going to spend our money. But what are the other big challenges now that's before you?
It still remains the same issues. One big challenge is getting quality teachers to come to our school system and work. There is a shortage of teachers across the nation, to be quite truthful. The colleges of education do not have enough students entering into the school, into their colleges, so that we get enough teachers to fill our needs at the beginning of the year. In some ways, people say that's fine. You can get people who are looking for a second career. You're able to go out and make it work, and we have. But the truth is, there has just been so much animosity and anger and criticism of public education, and people saying teachers don't get paid enough money, that we're having a hard time recruiting people. So we're still trying to recruit and retain the very best. And it's hard to do when education as a whole is being criticized and when pay is still not exactly where we would like for it to be. So recruiting great teachers who love kids is still key for us. A second issue that we're going to continue to work on is the integration of technology. How can we move so that our students are demonstrating the level of implementation of technology to the very best of their abilities? A lot of people like to say the classrooms today are like they were in the 50s. You go in, you see a blackboard, you see desks lined up. That's not true. We have interactive panels. We have desks now that students can get together and collaborate and work on problems. But the truth is, until I can get to a point where a student has a one-to-one relationship with technology and they can do their own research and then combine it with others when they're ready, our students still not going to be where they are. We're close. We now have students bringing their own device. My hope is that in the next eSplosh, we'll be able to get closer to a one-to-one so students will have their own individual device and we'll be able to help them expand. For me, those are the next two big issues for us.
Now, you know, you mentioned that the charter schools get to recruit and they have lists. You don't get to recruit. Whoever shows up at the doorstep at the schoolhouse, you have a charge to educate them.
Correct.
And they show up in all kind of conditions when they get there. Especially minority students. We found that minority students in Macon has lagged behind the achievement gap, if you will, been on the other side of it. What can the community do? What must we do as a community? Because we're hearing about, I know reading is a big thing for you, and it ought to be, but we hear that children, they leave school at 16, drop out, but they actually drop out in the 4th or 5th grade.
Right.
Because of what can the community, what more can we do as a community? What would be your advice to parents and the whole community at large, that every child is special? I was just listening yesterday at a thing on public radio, and they said there are dandelions and there are orchids, children. They put them in, but they're all special, and they all can learn and have it. What can we do as a community, parents, grandparents, uncles, to make sure that these children show up ready?
So before I answer that, I want to challenge you a little bit on something you said. This is not well known, and it's something that we know, but now the word is starting to get out. Recently, I was with a group that was looking at the next strategic plan for Macon Bibb, trying to figure out what we're going to work on, Macon 2.0. In the past, we've focused on places, spaces, jobs, and schools. Well, as they were doing the research, and this was just last week, it was presented to the group that when you compare African American students in Bibb to African American students in the state and in the nation, we're doing as well and better than the nation. If you compare our white students to white students in the state and in the nation, they're right there doing as well. The difference for us is when you look at the state average, the state has more white students enrolled than we do, so proportionately it doesn't work out.
So 70-30 versus the other way around here,
That's
where
right.
it's just the opposite. Yeah.
And so, the statement is, if we had that same ratio, we'd be above the state average. But we're not there. So I'm going to challenge and tell you that we may be lagging the state average, but our students are competing well compared to other students who are like them in the state and in the nation. But here's the answer for your question about what we can do to help kids. I'm going to say partner with us. We have a new initiative that we're working on. Have you ever heard of predictive analytics?
I've heard of it.
Predictive analytics is what they use, like with Google, where all of a sudden you get an email that says, maybe you want to go read this book, or maybe you want to buy this, because they've looked at your past background and they're able to say, this is something we think you'll be interested in. Well, what we have done in our school system is we have looked at the last 12 years of data for our students going through school, because we have all that data. And we're able to say, this is the grades they made, their discipline, their attendance, and how well they performed on state tests and intermediate tests that we give. We then looked at last year's graduating class and the graduating class before it. And when we said, these are the ones who graduated, these are the ones who didn't. For the ones who graduated, what was their attendance like in second grade? What was their discipline? What were their grades? What did that student who graduated look like in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade? And we can now apply that to every grade level that we have. We're doing the same thing with those who dropped out. And we're able to apply what we call risk assessments to it. And so starting next year, parents are going to have us saying things to them like, as we've looked at our data and we're looking at how your child's progressing towards graduation, we have concern about their attendance. We have concerns about the first 30 days of school. We have concerns about what their number of tardies, because if they start being tardy in fourth grade, it's going to be even worse than high school. And our test results tell us that if your child continues along that way, they may not be successful. And so what I'm asking for is for parents to, when we start having these conversations, trust us. We're not doing it we're not doing it to make things up. We're saying this is what the data is. And it's going to shock some people because, truthfully, I don't really need to bring my child to school that day before Christmas break. I don't need to bring them the day after Christmas break. Well, you know what? All those days matter because it puts in place a mindset for kids. And if they miss X number of days, they're either going to be on that track that looks like they're going to graduate or not. And so what I'm hopeful is that parents will partner with us more and listen to these concerns that we have. We have a total of 30 different success factors that we're going to be looking at, that we're going to start sharing with parents. And I think that's going to be what moves us to that next level.
Now, within your psychology department, do you look at the psychological makeup of a child? So what has happened with this child? What type of environment? Do you get into that in terms of the analytical thing, that this child has had some real bad things and he or she needs some special?
So analytics is just like a test. I can give you a test and say, you know what, it looks like you're predisposed to whatever based on your family history. But it's really up to you to how you exercise, how you conduct yourself, and how you live your life on how healthy you're going to be. When something happens, though, we need to go in and act on that. And that's the same thing that we're doing. This year, we hired more behavior specialists to work with our students. So when we identify a child's going through trauma, a family went through a divorce, a family member died, the family had to move here under conditions. Evicted. All those things.
Like Crystal Lake. What's happening with those children? How are those children being traumatized by sleeping on a cot and still got expect to go to school the next day?
That's right. And we have processes so we can get them to a school, but their attitude when they come, their mindset, is not the same as it was if they were in their stable environment coming from where they thought, what they called home. And so we have behavior specialists now that are working with our teachers and our counselors to help us deal with that group of students. And so we use our predictive analytics to hone in, and then we're going to apply face-to-face interactions with students so we can help them as best we can. We have more assistants now than we had 4 years ago, and I'm very excited about behavior specialists that we put in place.
You have moved graduation rate from, I understand, what, 58% to 79 something?
That's about right, yes, sir.
In a 4-year time. Now, that's huge, but yet we see young black boys. That seems to me, where I'm sitting looking, and I have one in my household, and I know what you have to do to stay on that fanny. But it seems to me that young black boys are having the biggest challenge and struggling more so than any other group. Is that a true assessment?
That's a true assessment. If you look across the nation, across the state, and here in Bibb, African-American males do seem to struggle more, and so we have to reach out to them more. So that's a true statement. I guess the benefit that we have here, though, is for us, that's the majority of our students. And so we're able to try and find solutions that will work. And so the way you can help, the way the community can help, is students have to have a sense of belonging. They need to be involved in athletics. They need to be involved in clubs. They need to be involved in some curricular so they can demonstrate their growth. I was just at a high school the other day, and I'll be honest, it was like I saw it for the first time. These are just young people trying to grow up. They're trying to figure out who they are, so they will wear their clothes in a strange way. They're going to say things. But here's what I also know. They're looking and they're listening to us, and they want to know that we can actually see through all that bluster and help them when they really need it. And so for African-American males, they have those issues. But I will tell you, African-American females have different type of issues we got to deal with. And this is the new issue that I am now starting to understand. I had a parent tell me this the other day, that they took their child to pre-K, and they were very excited because their child was going to be at Northwoods. But then they got concerned when they realized their child was going to be one of 2 white kids in a class of 25. That's a different experience as well. And how do we help our minority students, if you will, understand this is who we are and this is how we can help you navigate through school as well? Because that is what's going to help us grow. And so I think we're starting to develop that level of sensitivity as well.
Well, thank you so much. We have run out of time. They tell me that we have about 30 seconds left. Again, we want to congratulate you. You've made us proud. We realize that you still have work to do, and we're here to help you along this journey, because as you are successful, the children are successful, the community is successful, families are successful, and it's just a snowball effect. So congratulations on your personal achievement and success, but the success that you share and celebrate is a community success, and we celebrate it with you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've been talking with Dr. Curtis Jones, who was recently selected in the entire nation as the Superintendent of the Year for the public school system. That's a big deal, and we are proud of it. We're proud of him. Get involved in your schools. Do what you can. Until next week, I'm your host, Jack Ellis. Goodbye.